Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop, everybody. We're back 1 week later than expected, but Todd had some issues with his battery in his car, but you're all set now?
Yeah, good to go now.
Okay, so we're doing a watch party. This time we're playing the classic Citizen Kane from 1941. This is the movie that kind of put Orson Welles on the map after his antics with War of the Worlds.
Right.
And we're watching the Criterion copy from 2021. This is the Blu-ray from the UHD 4K release. I don't have a UHD player, unfortunately. So if anybody out there wants to throw one my way, feel free. I won't say no. If it's your first time listening to one of our watch parties, the idea is that you watch the film with us as our audio commentary, and we're going to cue this thing up. We've got it paused right at the beginning of the film, right before the RKO Pictures logo. So when I give you the countdown, that's what you're trying to sync it up to so you can follow along. We'll try to keep you entertained along the way. Enjoy yourselves. So without further ado, we're going to say 3, 2, 1... And we've got the beeping of the RKO tower, and we have begun.
I love these old school intros with the planet Earth. Of course, Universal does.
Oh yeah, those are fantastic with the little model airplane circling around.
Yeah, in the inner space travel.
This is the second time I've seen Citizen Kane.
Just the second, really?
Just the second. The first time I ever watched it was after AFI's Top 100 of the last 100 years came out in 1998, and I watched it very shortly after that list came out, probably on a VHS copy. And
wow.
I have not seen it since in its entirety. I mean, I'm sure I've seen bits and pieces and clips and interviews and whatnot, but
right. It's been quite a while since I've seen it too. I've definitely seen it more recently than that, but I think maybe this is my third viewing, I want to say. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I love this opening here with the dark atmosphere established,
almost menacing.
Yeah, and also you can certainly see right away the influence on film noir that this would have. Almost, I mean, the film. I mean, I don't know if you would call it a film noir, but it certainly has some of those elements.
I would agree, definitely. So, I was watching this, I'm sorry, as I was prepping notes this morning, just a few scribbles, this was co-written by Mankiewicz, the subject of the film Mank that came out just a few years ago.
Okay.
And that would make an excellent double feature with this movie, considering that a lot of the plot elements in Mank have to do with Citizen Kane and William Randolph Hearst's, reaction to the film,
right,
and how it affected Mankiewicz's being in that circle of friends. He kind of got ostracized by Hearst as a result of this. Yeah,
I think Mankiewicz was a notorious alcoholic. There's also a lot of infamous controversy surrounding who actually authored Citizen Kane. It's listed as a co-authorship between Welles and Mankiewicz, but a famous article that Camille Paglia wrote, I think in the 70s or late 60s, called that into question. And of course we have the famous Rosebud scene here.
It should be noted that this film was one of the earliest to make good use of non-linear plot line, jumping around in chronology to tell a story.
Right. One interesting thing, too, about this is, I didn't realize how much of a novice to film Orson Welles was. And the cinematographer actually wanted to work with Welles for that reason. Toland, I believe his name is, because he said that he was tired of working with all these people that knew so much about it that they were just doing the stock, typical things. And so Wells, because he didn't know that much about it, brought a different sensibility and would want to try things without really knowing if it could be done or not.
Yeah.
And that led to some of the innovation that you see in the film.
Yeah, Wells was, I would say, a novice, a newbie when it came to directing when he made this. And he was kind of learning a lot of it on the fly.
Right.
And I think he said that Stagecoach was like the biggest movie influence on him in terms of preparing to be a director.
Yeah, he said he watched it like 75 times or something.
Yeah,
like
I read
leading
40
up to it.
times and just to pick it apart and understand why, the whys and wherefores of different things in the film.
Right. Well, and he was such a novice that he didn't realize that that film, Stagecoach, actually was not considered a conventionally shot film and did a lot of things that you're not supposed to do for that time, at least. I love this opening that sort of is, for the time period, would have been familiar. The newsreels that would often come before a motion picture.
With the narrator with the big booming voice.
Right. And also something that film noir would borrow from later with the, opening narration. I
mean, you got to think about like an audience member going to see a film where the main character dies in the opening scene.
Right.
What a disorienting mindfuck kind of way to start a movie where up until then everything was pretty much straightforward.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this intro gives you essentially all the bullet points of his life.
Yes.
Literally all of them, up from the beginning into the end.
For our younger listeners, Kane was a newspaper man.
Right.
He had a newspaper empire, and he had a lot of influence on people. And of course, this was echoing the life path of William Randolph Hearst, the owner of Hearst newspapers. I think if you wanted to make a modern day comparison, it would be like a Rupert Murdoch type character.
Right.
But, Wells insists that it's not just William Randolph Hearst. Hearst, he was also, mimicking Pulitzer. Sam Insull and Howard McCormick. Apparently, those were two barons from Chicago.
Right.
That he leaned on heavily for also the DNA of Kane.
It's kind of funny, too, though. These were things he would only admit later on, a decade or two later after Hearst was dead, because they didn't want to get sued by Hearst, so they would insist that this was a complete invention when it originally came out. Another cool thing about this movie is that a lot of the actors were part of the Mercury acting troupe that Wells was a part of, and I guess had put together. And a lot of them became, veterans of cinema, but this was their first film in a lot of cases. Joseph Cotton, I think maybe had done a couple of short films, but this was his first feature-length film. Agnes Moorehead, her first one. And then, of course, after this, they're all over the place in cinematic history. As old-fashioned as some of the newspaper stuff and newsreel stuff may seem, thematically it's, could be contemporary with the fake news stuff and the calling people a fascist and all this. I mean, this is as much as things change, a lot stays the same.
Oh yeah. Of course, when this film came out, Hearst very famously he forbid rather all of his newspapers from talking about this movie, advertising the film, advertising anything having to do with RKO. They essentially blackballed them from all of their publications.
Right. Apparently, and this was in a documentary that's part of this Criterion set, Hearst sent his secretary to view the film before it was released, and she and the chauffeur sat in to watch it, and she got up in a huff and left when it became clear to her that this was influenced by her boss. But apparently the story goes the chauffeur hung around until the end and said, wow, that was a good movie. Or a good picture, I should say. That's what they called them back then. I wish we still called movies pictures instead of movies. I think Scorsese still tends to do that if you see interviews with him, but...
Talkies.
Yeah. I just like picture for some reason.
It's a picture. So I mentioned, the AFI Top 100 list. This was the number one film when it came out in 98. And I think they reissued the list in 2007. And again, it was the top movie. This stayed on top of the British Film Institute's Sight and Sound list for 50 years.
Yeah.
So
it just got replaced. I actually have a copy of the most recent Sight and Sound that was released late last year. And for the first time in 50 years or whatever, it was replaced by a Chantal Ackerman film called Jeanne Dielman. And there's more to the title than that. But it's a long title. It's an interesting movie. I don't know if it's the most entertaining thing in the world, but anyway, we won't get too bogged down with that. But the makeup in this is pretty impressive for considering, the time period. Mm-hmm. Wells, of course, was 26 years old, but like in this scene right here, I mean, I could buy him as a, older man. That prediction didn't age well.
Well, that was the film is a bit of a commentary on our involvement or lack of involvement at the time it was being shot in World War II as well, and kind of a precursor, like an early argument about the communism too.
Right,
and that's kind of interesting that this movie would age right into that as well. The end.
Look at that with the lighting coming in. It's just
some beautiful shots.
Really, it really is. A lot of these. The way a lot of the lighting is shot in this film was definitely inspired from Orson Welles' stage days. And so things that, you wouldn't typically have done in film, he would want to do just from the... in one of the documentaries, I think that same documentary that I referenced earlier, there are sketches from his period on the stage where you can see the clear influence of how he wanted the lighting shot in this movie, similar to some of his stage productions.
I mean, like this shot here, it's clearly backlighting, so you've got these striking silhouettes of these men without any of their features really in clear lighting and clear focus.
Right.
You know, Rosebud, which I'll talk a little bit about that later as we get into it. That I knew about Rosebud before I had watched this film.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's something that I heard growing up or read about, or it was always referenced in pop culture.
I knew about it from a Simpsons episode.
Okay,
where Burns was the Charles Foster Kane type character. And what the hell does Rosebud mean? Of course, a lot of ink has been spilled about that.
Citizen Kane.
Yep.
So the thing that Hearst really got pissed off the most about is that he assumed that Susan Kane was based on Marion Davies, his woman.
Right.
But Wells claims that it was based on a Chicago opera singer.
Right.
That Insel was trying to promote. It was McCormick's. I think it was McCormick's second wife. So
yeah, well, and I've seen an interview with Wells talking about that very thing, and he actually acknowledged that it was probably a dirty thing to do. He said at the time that the reason they did it was in part because they thought that would, it's not really about Hearst, but because everyone just assumed it was about Hearst, then what ended up happening was people just assumed that portrayal was about his, real life woman.
Yeah.
Which wasn't Wells's intent, but he,
I think that Wells built in plausible deniability,
right,
in knowing full well that people were going to connect dots with this. So clever on him for that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, go watch Mank, and a lot of these things that we're talking about play into that film.
Right.
This the just how Hearst was so irate about this movie, and how it affected him and his woman. Again, interesting framing, setting up the shot from this slightly elevated perspective. Mm-hmm. You've got the guy in the foreground on the phone. You've got the guy that's talking to him, and then you've got her in the background in this nice angled perspective shot.
Yep. And, when you watch this film, and I had this experience the first time, you hear about how innovative it is, but so much of this movies do all the time now, and so it's easy as a modern viewer to kind of lose track of that. But the more movies from the 30s and the period before this that I watched, you can really see the innovation. Movies up until then, you would typically just, the camera's either a medium or close-up shot right on whoever's speaking. You don't have shots like this where you see, what's going on in the background and that sort of thing.
Well, he does a really good job of creating intrigue, or at least indicating to the viewer that, this is not on the up and up, or it's not being presented in a very matter-of-fact manner, just by how much curiosity he creates with the shot.
Right. And then it just looks fantastic.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Ted Turner famously or infamously in the 80s tried to colorize Citizen Kane, but
yes.
And Orson Welles, I'm paraphrasing here, but said, "Tell Ted not to take crayons to my masterpiece," or something like that. And I think he finally aborted it. I think there are clips of the end of the film that they had finalized with the color, but Turner ended up not finishing the process, thankfully.
Look at these massive walls in this room.
Look at that light. I mean,
yeah, there's that shaft of light like before.
Ted Turner would have absolutely ruined this scene.
Color it yellow.
Yeah, right.
And here we go.
So it's interesting. We get the bullet points at the beginning of the movie from beginning to end, and now we're getting the long version.
Yep. And also the snow effect here is very closely echoed with that snow globe at the beginning of the film.
Right. Agnes Moorehead, who I referenced earlier, of course, long-time stalwart of cinema after this, but this was her first appearance in a movie. This is kind of a weird premise. And I'm not even sure I entirely understand it. So they sold more or less, or used as collateral, the Charles Foster or Kane character to the back. Is that something that was done back then? I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would send them but why would the bank want a child?
I don't know.
That part sort of was like, okay.
I've actually heard of this. Yeah, there are instances where, he could turn into a good worker. That kind of thing.
Very strange.
Yes. She was just ready to get rid of him.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this scene is she looks very cold, and she's sort of the ringleader behind this. But I think there's a moment coming up in a second where you see that there's really more there than meets the eye.
I always thought this child actor was a very good facsimile of Orson Welles. He kind of has the concerned eyes.
He could pass for it for sure.
That furrowed brow right there just gets me.
Yeah.
Wow, this transfer is gorgeous. Look at the texture of that fabric.
Absolutely.
It's like you could reach out and touch it.
Oh, yeah.
No, you just look like a character from a Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah.
Nothing scary about that at all.
I know it. That's where we see the mom's not really the cold one that we think she is initially. She's protecting him from the abusive father.
So I'm cracking open a new beer today. This is called It's Complicated Being a Wizard. This is by Burlington Brewing Company out of Vermont. Pretty fresh can. May 17th it was canned.
Is it a what type of beer?
Oh, it's a hazy IPA.
Hazy, gotcha.
Here, I'm just going to pass this over to you so you can have that later.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
It's okay.
I'm drinking Pernicious IPA from Wicked Weed, North Carolina brewery, which is probably one of my favorite IPAs. It's one I've had many times before.
Ironically, I'm drinking from a Wicked Weed glass that I absconded with from the brewery many years ago. Great shot. Great shot. You've got that dolly shot pulling back through the train.
Right.
And you see the headline over and over and over, and finally the guy reads it directly to the camera, just in case you didn't catch it.
Right. So we can see from these headlines that Foster Kane is establishing himself as a man of the people, a trust buster in the tradition of Teddy Roosevelt, I guess.
Yep.
I love his dialogue here, though.
It's a brilliant progression of time.
Yep.
No need to show us a silly montage of him doing things. Instead, they use newspaper, which is appropriate given his empire.
Right. And apparently Randolph Hearst said something very similar, which was one of the giveaways of the influence. That line, though, tells you he's not really sincere in the man of the people act that he's
right
putting on. And we can see this is a man who doesn't even know himself that well, because just a couple minutes ago, he talks about essentially inventing a war.
Yeah.
And now he's, I'm going to be the man of the people that protects the interests of the little man. And I think we see that come to fruition further as the movie progresses.
One thing I like about that previous shot was that Thatcher had his back to the camera for the majority of the shot. So it was clearly just all Kane grandstanding and all focus on him.
Right.
Until he finally gets up and turns in harsh profile. Like he's still not facing the audience.
Right.
Nice reveal.
Right.
It's like Nosferatu there in the shadows.
Yeah. We can already see the subtle aging there on Foster Kane.
Yeah.
Like I said, the makeup in this, especially for the time period, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was just noticing that on Thatcher as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we essentially see him in 3 different stages, and his hair loss was very well done.
You don't see like a cap on or something like that, like you do in some lesser films. Black and white, I'm sure, helped with that as well.
Oh, sure.
I think you couldn't get away with some of that in a color film.
Well, it's always, with the advent of HD, that's proven to be a huge challenge for filmmakers today. And that's also a challenge for aging actors and actresses. This unforgiving nature of high definition.
Right.
And I was curious what we would be seeing here. I mean, I remarked earlier on the fabrics of the clothing that they were wearing and how remarkably crisp they were. And I think that speaks to what you're saying about this impeccable makeup that they've got. I don't see anything to indicate, prosthetics, latex, or whatever.
Right.
Wah, wah.
That noir element is sort of, there as well with that character that's sort of investigating,
a little
who
detective.
Rosebud is.
Yeah. He's on the hunt.
Yep.
So now we're talking about Rosebud, so.
Right. Any theories about Rosebud?
Well, I'm going to talk about some of the official statements. Mankiewicz claims that, actually a biographer claimed that it was named after a bicycle that Mankiewicz had as a child that was stolen from him. However, Mankiewicz claimed himself that Rosebud was a racehorse that he bet and won on.
Right.
Now, Gore Vidal has said that Rosebud was a nickname that Hearst had for Marion Davies' private parts.
Yes, I've heard that. And apparently, and Wells was not consistent in his responses about Rosebud. In some interviews, he just said that it didn't really, that what Rosebud meant wasn't really even relevant. It was just they needed some sort of a hook for the movie, and that was something Mankiewicz had come up with for the hook. And then in other times, he's leaned into some of the other theories. And there's one interview that he apparently did. I haven't been able to find it, but apparently he was trying to explain the sexual metaphor to a sort of an interviewer who wasn't getting the drift, and finally he shouted out, "It's her cunt! It's her cunt!"
Oh God!
So anyway, but Wells has not been consistent, and
I wonder if that was by design on his part. I mean,
right.
Orson Welles was a crafty guy. He loved the game,
Yeah.
He loved spoofing people, and so I wonder if that was just intentional the whole time.
I tend to feel like he was probably being his most honest when he said, "Look, it was just a hook that we needed for the film," and
where it got its name was really not the most important thing.
Yep. Ultimately, though, whatever the artist had in mind for it actually doesn't matter. If you can come up with a theory behind a symbol like that, whether it's in a movie or literature or whatever, as long as it's defensible from what's in the movie,
sure,
it's valid. That's my postmodern take there.
Again, jumping around in time.
Yeah, we just the non-linear take. He's a young man again.
Yeah, without explanation, really. Just use your context clues to figure it out, audience.
Right.
It's a great device that's not unfamiliar to us now. I mean, it's something we see all the time.
Right. There's Joseph Cotton.
Mm-hmm. I like that hair on the left. I think I'm going to go for that cut next time.
Yeah. As dark as this movie is, it does a good job of interspersing some, comic relief at times.
Yeah. He's getting so kerfuffled.
Yeah.
Literally blowing up his cheeks as he's talking.
I was going to say, look at,
Very Mitch McConnell.
Right, yeah.
Look how disheveled he is. Look at his hair just wisping down like that. Yeah.
Of course, as humorous as the scene is, you have the conflict here between traditional journalistic values and
yellow. Yep, yellow journalism.
Yep, which of course is as prevalent today as ever.
Absolutely, it seems.
Look at them poking his lips out there.
Oh, it's just a master class in hamming it up.
Yeah.
Exasperated.
He's just an embodiment of a one long harumph.
Yes.
Apparently those long shots of the location that would then zero in on the action was one of the innovations of the movie as well. I was reading about.
So this movie did not recoup its expenses on initial release, even though it was well received, which...
Yep. Well, and Wells, too, and this probably led to some of the problems Wells had later in his career, the infamous problems with his other movies, losing control of them and having the studios butcher them. The Magnificent Ambersons, probably most famously, which is actually a great movie even in the version that exists. But when Wells was given a carte blanche with Citizen Kane, the contract he was given was very unique at the time of the studio system, where he basically got full control, rights to the final cut, and the studio wasn't going to interfere. And that was more or less unheard of at the time. And then, of course, as you say, the movie didn't recoup its funds, and so then from then on, he didn't tend to get that deal.
Brilliant shot. Principal actor, main character, head and shadow, the two supporting actors in full lighting.
Right.
I mean, that just like flies in the face of every conventional rule about setting up a shot.
Right. The era of the high water pants, as we see on Wells's pants, they're up to his nips almost.
The Fred Mertz.
Yeah.
I have a friend who referenced that the other day. Had to Fred Mertz my pants.
Right. Another good use of showing the time passing.
Yep.
With the circulation increasing.
Wow. Beautiful.
Yep.
We have fun.
Oh, God. Wow.
Just not anything you would see these days.
Surely not. I don't think you'd see this on the floor of the New York Times.
No.
So the White Stripes, the band, have a song called "The Union Forever," which, of course, our listeners will probably recognize from the beginning of the movie. And the song is comprised of lyrics that is sort of a pastiche of different scenes and songs from the film. And this is one of the first songs where you hear that. So this part of the song are lyrics in that song, which I did not even realize until the most recent time that I saw the film a few years back.
That's really cool. I never knew that.
Yeah. And it's probably one of my favorite White Stripes songs. Apparently, the studio attempted or threatened to sue Jack White because I don't think he gave a writing credit on the film, but nothing ever came of it, so I guess they dropped it.
How do they all know the song? I don't understand. I'm really confused. It's one of my issues I have with musicals.
Yeah.
How do they all know the lyrics?
And the dance moves.
Great shot, reflection.
Oh, yeah.
So he's basically buying up all of Europe and shipping it back.
Well, and this was another clue that it was about Randolph Hearst, who was infamous. He built an entire estate to house all the antiques that he bought, that he put his mistress in charge of.
Well, that takes brown nosing to a whole new level.
Getting a trophy made for your boss.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they didn't go down to the local trophy shop where the Little League goes to. But...
That was probably the most unnecessary line in the whole movie. Hey, let's all go to the window.
Yeah. Another great shot here.
You know who loves this movie?
Who is that?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He has quoted it and referenced it many times.
Really?
Yeah, I think he fancies
He doesn't
himself.
see the irony, apparently.
I don't think he sees the irony. He fancies himself a Kane-type character.
It does not shock me that he would not see that Kane is not the hero of this movie.
I think the thing that he has remarked on is that you can never let your guard down when you're in that kind of a high profile situation. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's probably true of anybody who's famous.
Yeah. Interesting, that's the lesson he took away.
Oh, well, it tracks.
Yeah, no.
Great shot. Mm-hmm. Fantastic tracking. Just
right. Another good job with the makeup on Cotton here.
Yep. And I like the context. He's like in this convalescent type nursing home.
Yep, you can see the two
just
ghostly figures in the background.
That's all you need. There was no need for a facade, an entryway, a nurse, anything. You know exactly what's up. Beautiful shot.
Right. It looks like he has a literal rope around his waist there.
Yeah. So he won't get away.
Yeah.
He's a flight risk.
You know, that is actually a thing they do in nursing homes. I went to visit my grandfather one time, and some of the people were sort of strapped down,
Sure.
that kind of thing to protect them. But I think that's a nice little subtle touch, though, that, he's not quite in his right mind. He keeps mentioning the thing about the getting him a cigar and that kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, that was a good dissolve
Brilliant,
there.
brilliant dissolve, brilliant setup.
Yeah.
Just masterfully done. And that read like a stage play where you've got a narrator at the foreground or two principal actors at the foreground, and the curtain comes back to reveal what's behind it. That was really well done.
Yeah.
Another stage in his life, different hairstyle, facial hair.
Right. This is a brilliant scene because they keep showing different dialogues that he has with his wife at different stages of their marriage, and you can see the dissolution or the degrading of the relationship over time. Here's They go from, lovebirds to increasingly annoyed with one another.
Yeah. That is one hell of a piece around her neck there.
Oh, yeah. What do you call it? What would you call that?
It's like a freaking lace doily with a brooch on top of it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Oh, yeah, his attitude shift. Yep. And even her, look at that icy stare.
Mm-hmm. All in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and not even talking at this point. They're just reading the paper.
Yep. And now this long shot gives us a sense of the distance. That's just a great scene. You see the marriage fall apart in a minute and a half.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with action, conflict, or anything. It's really just the way they speak to one another.
Yep.
Wow.
That's the sort of line I could see Trump appealing to the cross section of an American public and sizing someone up that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking that, as well as his. I was thinking back to his history of his wives.
Oh yeah. Another terrific shot there. You can see at the beginning of this relationship, this character is such a happy-go-lucky young woman, which will not be the case later on. Almost the exact opposite.
Significant age difference between the two.
Right. Well, if you've ever seen the pictures of Randolph Hearst and his mistress, she was apparently a showgirl, I guess.
Yeah.
And he sort of became infatuated with her.
Which, again, something else to piss him off about this film.
Right. Well, and not disguising very well the influence.
Right.
I guess now, though, you can pretty easily get away with it. I mean, these biopics come out all the time that don't have the thumbs up from the...
Yeah, no authorization whatsoever.
Yep.
But I think another thing is that, in today's world, if you're famous, your life is pretty much out there in the news cycle 24/7. Mm-hmm. Through social media, through the TMZ type people, the muckraking websites.
Right.
Back then, if somebody puts out a movie, oh my God, rumor becomes real.
Right.
So it's pretty sensational.
I mean, you think of a movie like Oliver Stone's W., which is not a flattering portrait of George W. Bush, but there was never any concern that George W. Bush was filing a lawsuit or something.
No. We think about the, it wasn't a particularly good movie, but the one about Megyn Kelly and the Fox News girls who were getting, harassed and off.
What was that one called? I actually kind of liked that one.
I kind of liked it too. I thought
a great movie.
I think Charlize Theron did a really good job with what she had to work with.
Right.
But that's speaking of Rupert Murdoch. Mm-hmm. That squarely pointed the lens at his operation, and where was the outrage? There was none.
Right. And then, of course, there's that scene where I guess it's John Lithgow playing Roger Ailes, right? Mm-hmm. Sexually, harassing the character. Now, Roger Ailes was dead by then, of course, but nevertheless, in this time period, I guess the family could have sued or something, I would imagine. So it is interesting to think about those differences and the concerns.
Interesting audio on the clock.
It's kind of interesting too with her voice. I don't think she sings that badly, but Lord, they in the scenes coming up, they savage her here soon.
The fighting liberal. So Jim Geddes, in this particular scene, he is based on Charles Murphy, the leader of the Tammany Hall machine.
Ah, and that was during the Teddy Roosevelt era, right?
Right, and that is 100% admitted by both the filmmakers. Right.
Of course, I'm sure they didn't mind admitting that since he was probably long dead by the time this movie came out.
I've always loved this giant backdrop.
Yeah.
Just the gall.
Right. The kind of thing that you probably wouldn't do these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, why the face? Why do you have to have your face on that giant backdrop? People know what you look like, or if they don't, who cares?
I guess it's kind of like a statue or something. Mm-hmm. A version of that. If you read and listen to stuff from this era, though, there does seem to be more of a worship of certain figures, famous figures that you don't really get anymore.
Right.
I mean, not that there aren't fawning masses, but...
Yeah.
Although now that I think about it, I guess Trump is almost his fans are almost a throwback to this era of sort of the worship of a
demagoguery.
Demagoguery, correct? Right. Which is something, and of course, I'm a pinko liberal over here, but you didn't really see that with someone like even Bush. Maybe a little bit post 9/11, but
Yeah, this willful surrender to please take us to the promised land.
Correct.
because we're helpless and we have no clue of what we're doing.
Exactly. And
That's the impression I get.
Yeah, and Trump does seem like a throwback in that sense.
Well, when you blindly follow anybody, not just Trump, but anybody, you blindly follow a leader, you're surrendering yourself to their whim and what their objectives are.
Yeah.
And if they align with yours, great. But chances are they have ulterior motives and...
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Which I think is going to be evidenced in this very film.
Yep, exactly. It's kind of interesting. They reference that his son, Foster Kane's son, gets killed in that newsreel, but they don't really do anything with it in the movie itself, which is an interesting choice. And I wonder if that's just meant to emphasize
it's about him.
Yeah, or even maybe the almost irrelevance of the son.
Now we do have to make a note of the big K on his cravat.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty.
Right.
That's pretty egotistical.
Oh sure. Boy, this is an uncomfortable situation coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Forcing your husband to take you to his mistress's home.
Yeah.
When you're in full regalia.
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Another diagonal shot of all four actors.
Right. And I love how this character is in the dark.
Of course, yeah. This is... characters in shadow is something that really could be... You could write a whole paper on that in this one movie.
Right.
Again, two silhouettes of the principals talking to each other in shadow. Just stuff you just didn't see then.
Yeah.
Big rule breaker.
Yep. And that's something I can appreciate more watching the movie now that, when I initially watched it, I definitely had not watched as many films prior to this. And now that I've seen a bunch of those, I can definitely see it's doing a lot of stuff that wasn't often done prior to this.
But I'm sure there were studio people that were watching these on dailies going, we can't use this. This is terrible.
Yeah.
This isn't done.
Well, and the fact that Wells was such a novice for film, really was part of the recipe there. That, coupled with him surrounding himself with people who were masters of the craft, like Greg Toland was, a terrific cameraman, and so he was able to help bring those ideas of Wells to life.
Shut up.
Do we have to run a black light around this room?
Oh, that look right there.
Yeah.
You are so inconsequential.
Yeah.
That guy's look was just so dismissive.
Yeah.
You stupid woman.
Yeah. Nah, I think I'll hang around. It kind of looks like that little thing underneath the coat. It looks like he was at the gym with a towel around him, and then he just had to throw his coat on real quick to go, head over there. He was in the steam room and got pulled out.
Here we go. Hubris.
I love how his voice...
Beautiful sound design.
Yep.
Holy shit.
His voice disappears, the impotence of it. That's great.
Yep.
Sings it. Nope. It's gone.
I love how singers in quotes.
Yeah. So they had already printed a Kane elected sort of Harry Truman style there.
Yep.
Before Harry Truman.
Well, here's your other one. The alternate headline was Fraud at Polls. They had already decided that the election was a fraud if they lost.
That's interesting. It would not shock me knowing that now that Trump is a fan of this movie, if that was not a lesson he also took from this. That is...
Wow.
Huh. Interesting.
You got to get ahead of it. Get ahead of the story.
That's right.
Election was rigged.
If I lost, it was rigged.
Rigged. Of course, they were saying that before the election day even approached.
Right.
Rigged. The election was rigged.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's part of... I think that's part of the recipe is you have to lay the groundwork first, so then when it happens, it's more believable.
It becomes real, yeah. Interesting shot from the floor.
Right.
Get a good view of all the shit.
The streamers that were there for the celebration.
Yep.
This wasn't like the World Series instances that you hear where, like the Red Sox and the Mets when they had the champagne in the Red Sox room and then Bill Buckner bobbles the...
Yes.
And then Bob Costas talks about being back there and that they had to very quickly get the champagne and everything out of the room. Nothing like that going on here. There are the streamers and...
Everybody just fucked off and went home.
Yeah.
The other thing about this Florida ceiling shot, Kane looks like a giant in the foreground until he approaches. Yeah, there's something to be said about how people perceive Kane and how Kane perceives people as smaller than him. This whole ground up staging of the shot really speaks to that. We're small, he's big. We're beneath him. You know, Jedediah is just a name that just doesn't get used as much anymore. I think that we should bring it back.
Yeah, you hear a Jeb occasionally, but not a Jedediah.
I'm going to say it right here on the show. If you name your next child Jedediah, I'll send you a free Cinema Chop Shop keychain. What did you think of that beer, by the way? The Wizard beer. What did you think about it?
It had a little smoky quality to it.
It's not quite there. Something's off about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay, but...
Yeah, it was fine. Oh. Damn it.
You're going to have to buy me a new couch. So this is the part that speaks to the character being taken from an opera singer in Chicago. Built an entire opera house for the singer.
Right.
To put her on the stage, and she's not that good.
And I feel horrible for her in these scenes.
Oh, yeah.
This is his thing, not her. She just had some throwaway, comment to him about, maybe wanting to do something like this.
Well, this is about Kane proving that he has the means to make you what you just, like you said, offhandedly said that you'd like to do. Well, by God, I'm going to make it happen because I'm Kane.
And to me, she's not that bad of a singer, but I guess from the expectations of what an opera... I'm not an opera aficionado, so maybe someone more up on that genre would be able to point out the flaws in her technique. But this is a great shot, though.
Great shot.
See even the guys that are kind of working at the top of the whatever you call it.
The catwalks.
Yeah, the catwalks are like... Ugh.
P.U. And that's a ridiculously high catwalk, by the way.
Yeah.
Most don't go that high.
Yeah.
It's the penguin.
Other than Mr. Leland, he's been able to cook the books with the reviews.
Yeah.
Even though the audience clearly is not enamored.
Yep. I know this is just an opera that they're talking about and his squeeze, but it does speak to a bigger thing about manipulating the news.
Oh, absolutely.
Something that we see way too much of today. And tail wagging the dog.
Right.
A beautiful shot. Look how big that bottle looks in perspective.
I know. If you drank half of that, you'd be pretty snockered. This is a really remarkable scene where he finishes the screed about his mistress,
Yeah.
begun by
His friend.
his friend. Yeah,
Yeah. Who obviously was conflicted, which is why he turned to the bottle.
right.
And I wonder, that's a novelty for Kane at this point, to have somebody express their true opinion around him.
Right. Interestingly, that was something that Wells himself dealt with, because if you know anything about Wells' biography, he was considered a child prodigy, and he said himself in interviews that he was like, I didn't hear a negative comment about me until I was well. He would laugh about it, and, until he was well into his adulthood. But so he could probably relate to that with the Foster Kane character.
Are you old enough to remember Orson Welles in his later years, like when he would make a TV appearance or whatnot?
He died in 1985, so I would have been about 4 years old.
Okay.
So no. However, a lot of those clips and things,
He became a parody of himself.
Right.
I remember seeing him on television, just this bloated old man with a beard, a cigar, a glass of brandy, just...
My perception of him was sort of colored by that caricature too. There was a TV show that I liked back in the day, it was an animated series called The Critic. You may remember.
Oh, yeah.
John Lovitz.
Yep.
And there was an Orson Welles, lampoon at one point where he's eating a sandwich or something, and he's big and bloated and fat, and that kind of thing. I guess the same fate befell from The Godfather.
Oh, Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, yeah.
One of my earliest memories of Orson Welles, or being aware of him, was he was the narrator on a film called The Man Who Saw the End of the World. I believe it was called. It was a movie about Nostradamus.
Right. Oh.
And I was convinced that the world was going to end in 1994 thanks to that movie.
I see. It seems like I saw that as well. Like some of those things would be shown, over the years.
But Wells would do that, and then I think he was a pitch man for several products on commercials. I remember seeing him a lot of times on that. My favorite depiction of him, I think, would probably be Pinky and the Brain. Clearly, Brain was modeled after Orson Welles.
Right. Well, and that kind of speaks to, and it's kind of sad in a way, that after this movie seemed to set the tone for his career, the fact that it was unsuccessful, they gave him all the power the first time, and then after that, they never would give it to him again.
Right.
And he could never execute the vision the way he wanted to. Maybe with one or two exceptions. Touch of Evil is a great movie. I actually like the Magnificent Ambersons, even though apparently the version that exists is a butchered studio version. But the manipulation that went into his work hereafter, I think kind of played into the perception of him, because you wouldn't see Martin Scorsese or someone like that, doing a voiceover for a Nostradamus documentary or something
right,
like that,
or being a pitch man for Steak and Ale or restaurants or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's the kind of sad, like, parody of himself that he became, and that's what I was exposed to in the late 70s, early 80s, I guess. He was definitely been relegated to that point in his career, which was it's unfortunate, because the man obviously has a certain brilliance.
Yeah. Well, and that was even as someone, even after he died, that perception, as I noted earlier, kind of lived on. That was sort of my view of him as well for many years. So,
have you ever seen Touch of Evil?
Oh, I have. Yeah,
with him and Charlton Heston.
Yeah,
just a fantastic movie.
That opening shot is amazing.
Oh, Vivian Lee's in it as well, and that's a film noir, clearly.
Oh, sure.
And other than Charlton Heston playing a Mexican,
that didn't age well.
Which he doesn't play it in an offensive way. It's just that they just say, "Oh, you're Mexican," and Charlton Heston's like, "Yes, I am."
And it's black and white, so okay.
Yeah. But Orson Welles is despicable in that movie. Just beautifully done.
Yeah. So other than this movie, I would say his other two unquestioned masterpieces would be that one and The Lady from Shanghai. Have you seen that one?
I have not. No.
Oh, it's good. I only saw it within the last year or so, but those two movies seem to be the only other ones other than Citizen Kane that didn't get manipulated with by studios.
All right, our detective has picked up the scent again.
Yeah. Oh, God. Basically, this woman is what today we would call a karaoke good singer.
Yeah.
But who, when put on, the sort of person who, gets loud applauses at karaoke, but then goes on American Idol and gets ripped apart by Simon Cowell or something like that.
Yeah.
Gets a no dog from Randy Jackson. That kind of thing. It really is strange, his obsession with making sure that she becomes a what do they call
an ingenue?
Yeah, prima donna.
Prima donna. That's the word. Well, it's his name on the line,
right?
And that speaks to his narcissism.
Yeah.
Just this
it has nothing to do with her, because she's clearly unhappy with.
She's an accessory.
Yep.
He has to have her successful because it makes him look good.
Yep. And since she's the mistress and not the wife, she could be thrown out in the cold at any moment.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I was just wondering, why did he hang on to her so long? It should become evident to him that this isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. He should replace her with a newer model.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if this is, maybe he's seeing, because he came from that somewhat that humble background, and so maybe he's, maybe that's actually a human part of him trying to.
Sure. And this isn't a time where spouses aren't as disposable as they are today.
Right.
Especially among the famous.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I think it was a good scene. Good job making it chaotic, and just really just by the seat of your pants, everything's kind of whipped together.
Yeah. And in this, it has kind of a realism to it, and I'm sure that Wells would have been able to know precisely what that anxiety behind stage looks like in the moments before the curtain rises.
Oh, here comes the famous GIF.
Yeah. You're a GIF, not GIF person.
I am a GIF person. I disagree with the creator of the GIF.
Yeah.
Because the first word in GIF is graphic. Graphic. But yes, for anybody who has used the GIF or GIF of the clapping Orson Welles.
Yep, here it is.
Here it comes. All of these hangers-on, these leeches, just gathered up in the upper boxes.
Yep.
He looks like Peter Sellers, by the way.
Yeah. And whoever that actor is, I don't know who it is, but he did a good job with the little small role he had. I thought he's pretty funny.
And of course, by now you saw the shots of the hangers-on. They're just like getting bored and fidgeting. And
right. Boy.
I'm surprised he didn't have someone executed.
He's like smile and obviously she's miserable.
Yep.
Wow. That is.
I say Peter Sellers. It's like a Salvador Dali meets Peter Sellers.
He also has a little bit of a Marx brother.
Yeah.
To him,
especially with the physical comedy.
Yeah.
And she's entirely expressionless.
Yeah.
And here it comes.
Keep clapping, you sycophants.
That's right. And she looks so inept up there grabbing the flowers.
Oh, God.
Oh, well, how uncomfortable. And that was the first time cringe was shot on film.
Now compare this version of her to the happy-go-lucky laughing when even though she has a toothache when we first get introduced to her.
Sure.
Now she's like the shrill.
She's
and not her fault, by the way. He's done this to her.
She's had the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
That's the problem. She's gotten sucked into this make-believe fantasy world.
I think I would have cashed it. Even now, $25,000 then was
that's retiring money. Yeah, that's retiring money.
The Declaration of Principles is was another dead giveaway about it being a Randolph Hearst because he infamously published what he called a Declaration of Principles in one of his papers at one time. So,
Okay.
Yeah. That was something they talked about in the documentary. That
Notice how I know she's upset, but notice her delivery of her lines, her accent
Yeah.
is so different now.
I know.
Just I hate using the word shrill, but she is shrill.
Right. She's a completely different person.
Yeah.
Now that he's tried to force this persona on her.
Yep.
That she did not clearly want. Which, apparently the real mistress of Randolph Hearst was not like that at all. Apparently she was, she was put in charge of his estate that Xanadu was based off of, that housed all his antiques, and she was a gracious host.
Yeah.
So that was part of what angered him, as you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
And now the controversy is laid bare. He's trying to fight against you see the dueling,
Oh, sure. And again, he's controlling these newspapers, so the headlines read what he wants it to read.
The one he controls does the Inquirer, but the one before that was
Right.
So he's trying to, do that battle. This would have been an interesting era to live in, too, where, we have the internet now, but of course their version of the internet was you didn't just have one newspaper a day, at least not in cities. You would have
at least two, the evening edition,
right.
the morning edition, then you have the dueling newspapers.
Right. And then, of course, the extra.
Yeah, Newswees. Again, another great shot with the larger-than-life foreground object.
And then that, the clearest thing is the cup with the spoon and the, what was that? Medicine of some kind?
Yeah, the medicine dropper.
Yeah. Trying to kill herself.
Clearly.
Yeah. There's something to be said, and I guess they had to do this to get by the censors in part, but the delicacy with which they would handle scenes like, a suicide scene like this, where that word is never mentioned at all.
Right.
But the context clues that you
clearly,
the clear picture of the cup with the spoon in it, and we know there's something to be said for the...
Yeah, I mean, they had to be very careful. I mean, this is post-Hays Code, so...
Yeah.
She looks positively feral.
She looks peaked, as they might say.
Yeah.
For some reason, the scene from Scrooge, where Scrooge is looking at his sister dying, popped into my head just now. How magnanimous of him.
I'm going to buy the audience.
Thank God you're giving up on this dream of yours.
Jeez.
I don't have to sing anymore.
Now we got some matte paintings.
Yeah. Which I like.
Oh, I love matte paintings.
They need to bring those back. Of course, it wouldn't work in... it'd have to be a black and white movie for it to work, but... You can see what her life's become. She's doing a puzzle in the dark.
Oh, God, Xanadu. It's just... How depressing.
I know.
This reminds me of like the opening scenes of Dracula.
Yes.
When he comes down the stairs and...
Right.
Got
the only thing missing are the cobwebs.
Yeah, it's just the booming echo.
Look at that giant fireplace.
It's just over the top. I love it.
To me, it would be depressing to live in a place like that unless you were constantly surrounded by people. It would just emphasize your loneliness to be in a massive place like that and to be by yourself. Places with wings in them, and you're the only one in the wing.
I want somebody to have the balls to make a movie called Citizen Kane. It'd basically be the same film.
Yeah. South Park came close with their fish sticks episode.
Yeah, they did. Yep.
Standing behind that seems like it would almost sear your back.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've stood behind like just a normal sized campfire before and be like, okay, I got to back up a little.
Well, even more perspective tricks. He looks dwarfed in front of that he looks small in front of that huge fireplace.
Right. Oh, this is a great showing of the passage of time here. Her completing this gigantic puzzle.
Multiple puzzles.
Which probably, yeah.
Here we go. More Dracula shots.
Oh, God. It's just all dark. Film noir definitely owes a debt to this. When did Maltese Falcon come out? After this, right? Or maybe the same year, possibly. 41?
Possibly.
But even Maltese Falcon wasn't shot with this darkness.
No, it came out in 41 as well.
Yeah.
The Bogart version.
But certainly the dark shadowy.
Oh, this is great. This is the absurdity of her going, huh?
Yep.
Can't even hear him. They're so far away from each other.
Yep.
And of course, that's a bellows next to her for the fireplace.
Yeah.
As big as she is.
Right.
Just amazing. And then these ridiculous outfits.
Look at that coat. What colors do you think that was?
I'm pretty sure we were talking about red, blue, and yellow.
Yeah.
Probably
like a rainbow type.
Yeah, primary color stripes.
This is another part of the lyrics of the White Stripe song I referenced earlier.
Oh, need to rewind that. Too bad we're doing this live, but there's a shot of birds flying across, and they're clearly animated.
Really?
Yeah, these two birds cross each other, and they cannot possibly be real. Their movements are very staggered.
Huh.
It's funny you should mention Marlon Brando. He looks like Marlon Brando in this scene.
Right.
White people cannot keep the beat.
Nope.
Wow, even then. Look at that. That is terrible. That's an interesting shot, Orson.
Yeah.
This person's screaming in the background.
Yeah. Look at all those useless statues. They're not even arranged in any sort of way that would be considered, interior decorator that came in there would be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
They're just stacked in there.
This period of the film, Kids in the Hall did a character with Dave Foley that looked exactly like this.
I remember that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's the crazy maniacal business leader, and he was the main character in Brain Candy, the much maligned film. But he picked up the character again when they made their second run, I guess, on Amazon last year or 2 years ago. And it's this exact character, this very
friend of the podcast, and I, Joey Poole, watched some of those episodes. The first 2 or 3 episodes were actually pretty good, and then it just kind of fell off track. But yeah, I remember that.
I applaud them for just doing it.
Yeah.
They're too funny and too talented not to be together.
Mm-hmm. He had her until he said, "You can't do this
to me." Yep.
Look how short that door is.
Yep.
And you could, great shot.
Yep. Amazing.
A picture magazine versus a
text magazine.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, let me finish this.
And you can see she's closed the bar down.
Yeah. Another film noir kind of frame on this.
Oh, yeah.
Rolls the R. Wow. What a jarring transition.
Yes. And another...
kind of Fellini-esque, actually.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. And here we return to the scene from before, and the famous scene coming up.
Just the feeling of impotence.
Yep.
In that.
Yeah, and you know, the interesting thing about the scene, one video I watched, it was an interview with a film professor that was talking about this, teaching this movie, said that, you know, oftentimes she would have trouble with it, and this scene in particular, students would like burst out laughing. But she came to have sympathy for the students because she said, well, it is kind of funny because it's just blind impotence.
Yeah.
It's just flailing impotence, and there is something darkly comic about that.
Yeah.
What he's doing right now is just pulling the sheets off the bed for who?
Well, especially when you don't have any sympathy for the character.
Yeah.
It is funny.
Yeah. And this was just complete impotence.
And tantrum, a rich tantrum.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's the other thing funny about it is it's a rich man having a temper tantrum.
Yep.
This is a 2-year-old. I wonder if even Wells thought of it that way, because you can see by some of his facial expressions, it's almost like he's a toddler, like...
It's funny, we referenced the Dracula scenes earlier in Xanadu. Now this looks like Frankenstein.
Right, yeah.
The monster just, flailing about, ransacking things.
Mm-hmm.
Because he does look rather mindless.
Yep. Well, if you change your mind and come back, you're going to have a mess to clean up.
Because Charles Foster Kane does not clean.
All right, maybe I'll pay someone to clean it up, but it'll be a mess for a while. There we got Rosebud again.
Yeah, those door jams look really short.
I know, and I'm sure that was probably intentional. And I wonder, if you watch old German expressionistic silent films, they would do those types of things where things would be sizes that didn't really make a lot of sense. And
yep.
We talked about this with Suspiria too.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
The 70s version.
Great shot.
Yep. A funhouse mirror.
Copies of himself.
Yeah.
That's how I knew he was dead. He didn't say anything.
Yeah, if someone doesn't say anything,
silent people are dead. Yeah.
Hopefully he wasn't the attending physician.
Well, our work's done here, boys.
Let's get him to the crematorium. Look at this.
It looks like a freaking antique shop or a consignment shop.
And this is just the mark of someone you couldn't possibly care about all that,
Yeah.
It's a hoarding almost.
Yeah.
It's like a billionaire hoard. Actually, and now that I think about it with Randolph Hearst, the fact that he built an estate specifically to house his antiques, that's just textbook hoarding, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And somebody... not just hoarding, but somebody who's rich and the money is meaningless.
Yeah.
I got to do something with it, so I might as well just buy every piece of art and, statue that comes on the market.
It looks like the closing scenes of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Dude, you stole my line. There's a scene coming up here in a minute.
Yeah.
That's an overhead shot. And that was what I was going to say. I was going to say top men.
Well, it's funny that
still do it, but...
we mentioned that. Hopefully I'm not spoiling this for anybody who's been along for the ride this far, but Steven Spielberg owned one of the Rosebud props.
Right.
He paid about $60,000 or $600,000 for it was one of the balsa wood rosebuds. Mm-hmm. And
that they were about to burn on the lot.
Right. And so he bought it and then later donated it to the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures.
Yeah.
Because he said this deserves to be in a museum.
But certainly the shot coming up here momentarily, Spielberg got strong influence from Citizen Kane.
Yeah. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. I remember the last time I watched this movie, I just remember. Yeah.
Nobody could possibly take in, absorb this much stuff. Mm-hmm. The absurdity of owning so many things.
Yeah.
There's no enjoyment in it because it's just too much.
Yeah. You wouldn't even remember most of what you owned.
Oh,
at that
sure.
point.
I mean,
be like, oh, that. Now this is the scene where it's like
top men.
Top men. Do you even know where the Lost Ark is? We've got top men working on it. Who?
Top men. It's insane. Just the scope and scale of shit.
I know. Any one of those things that you could give to someone, let them sell it, would change their lives probably.
Right, and
you've just got endless supplies.
That speaks to the wealth divide,
the opulence
that we still have.
Yep.
Just there are people who have this much crap, or the ability to own this much crap.
That they could just give it to
one piece would change someone's life. Yeah,
right.
So again, how is this considered to be the hero of the film?
Yep, and here's Rosebud.
Yep.
And the closing shot.
Rosebud.
The cunt being incinerated. If we believe that one theory.
Yep. Rosebud.
Yes. Of course, my interpretation of this was always, I think, kind of the obvious one, which was just that it was the lost childhood that he had. The last happy moment that we see him have in the film is when he's saying Union Forever before he gets sent away by his parents. Right?
Yep.
So, I mean, Occam's razor, that was always kind of my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Rosebud, he's just thinking back to that last happy moment he had. Even in his death. Don't come
at my shit.
Yeah.
Stay off my lawn.
Yes. All right.
So there you go, folks. Citizen Kane, a classic. And my phone decides to ring. It's spam, of course.
I like this little, here at the end, the Mercury Theater introduction of these actors who would have been unknown to film goers at the time, but then later on became, veterans. Certainly, at least Moorhead and
Cotton. Yeah.
But also, I can't remember his name. We'll see him in a minute. Ruth Warwick, certainly.
Uh-huh.
Ray Collins, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Harumph. I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
Yeah.
You watch your ass. That's a... Everett Sloan, of course. Yeah.
Great.
Yep. I kind of like how movies that do that sort of at the end. Although tonally, it almost doesn't fit in this case because they have that jaunty music in the background for this otherwise dark picture.
It's a strange selection for the closing music,
But again, that probably has to do with Wells's background from theater, where he's like, you got to have the curtain call.
Yeah.
And have everyone come out. And
everybody comes out and waves to the crowd and takes their bows.
Takes their bow, yeah. So,
all right.
Editing Robert Wise, by the way. So he got his start here, the famous director Robert Wise. Lots of interesting stuff about Greg Toland. If you watch some of the supplemental material on the Criterion DVD.
So there you go, folks. Citizen Kane. All right, it's been a long haul. We're at 2 hours. This is longer than normal, but we felt we had to do this one. Todd, thanks for joining me on the watch party. This is your first watch party.
Absolutely, it was a blast.
I think you did a fine job. It's hard to fill 2 hours with chatter, but
Sure.
we did it.
I think we made it, man.
You, the listener, thank you for joining us, and we're going to be back in a few weeks. I think we're doing guilty pleasure movies next.
Ooh,
I think that's what we talked about. So think about those kind of movies that you enjoy watching that you're probably not supposed to enjoy watching, but you will always watch when they're on TV or in the background. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up really quickly, but follow us on social media. We're Cinema Chop Shop. Catch us on YouTube. We're Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. Email us, cinemachopshop@gmail.com. And please tell your friends, rate, review, and subscribe. And until next time, please remember to watch, chop, retrofit. And that's it.